So I'm a male nurse at a large hospital in San Francisco. I work in the ER, and as is custom Thanksgiving night, it was very busy. Now my wife is also a nurse for the same hospital. She works in labor and delivery. Between babies being born left and right and the people coming into the ER, we hadn't had a chance to take a break together as we try to do every shift. So when she called, I figured it was to say she wanted to meet up for a bite to eat in the cafeteria. When I answered, I heard in the background a male voice screaming profanities in the background, and my wife, who is fluent in Spanish, trying to calm this guy down. She told me their pager wasn't working and they needed security stat. I quickly hung up, called for security, told my fellow nurses what was going on, and ran for labor and delivery, worried sick about my wife. When I ran almost square smack dab into this visibly angry man. He wasn't huge, but bro definitely worked out and not at the gym. He was covered in prison tattoos and he was obviously a banger. I work out regularly, but I knew this guy could kick my ass. He looked at me, gave me this sick grin and started heading towards me, sprouting off in Spanish. I don't speak fluent Spanish, but what I could understand scared the living shit out of me. I'm backing up as fast as I can. I start buzzing the door to the ER frantically for them to let me in. This guy's literally a foot away from me and the door opens and I'm pulled into safety by a doctor. Gangbanger punches the door a few times, makes a dragging sign across his throat while grinning at us both. Next thing I know, the police rush into the corridor he's in, and it takes 2 security officers and 2 cops to subdue this dude. I finally make it to my wife, who thankfully was shaken up but unhurt. She explained to me what happened. A young girl, only 14, came in, high fever, vomiting, distended belly. The banger claimed he was her brother and they needed to cut her open to get her baby. They did an ultrasound, and to their horror, they realized she wasn't pregnant. She had bags of drugs in her stomach. It's very common for drug mules to bring over young women from Mexico carrying drugs that way. Homeboy freaked out when they informed him his sister needed emergency surgery. And no, he wasn't getting his drugs. Thankfully the girl survived, but the sad thing is, she will be going to most likely be deported once she recovers. So gangbanger who wants to kill me, let's never meet again. I was feeling generous on Thanksgiving. I've been lurking on this sub for a while and wanted to share my story. It was Thanksgiving 2011 and I was celebrating at my grandparents' farm in the little town of Seville, Florida. It's north of D-Land. I'd had way too much to eat that holiday and was about to leave to drive back to school in Tallahassee. I stopped at the one little gas station in town to fill up before getting on the highway. I had just finished filling up when a lady walked up to me. She was really ratty looking with crazy blonde dyed hair, but this is the backwoods of Florida, so no judgment. There were really kind people who looked like that in those parts. She started talking to me about how her car had run out of gas. She pointed to an old junker parked over near the convenience store. And if I could possibly give her some cash to get home. I usually don't say yes to things like that, but it was Thanksgiving weekend, so I was feeling extra generous. I told her that I'd be happy to fill up her car a little to get her home. Then, it started getting weird. She kept insisting I give her cash, and that the car was so empty she couldn't drive it to a pump. I don't know why I didn't leave right there and then, but again, I was in a very good mood. I told her if she had a gas can, I would put some in, but I didn't feel comfortable giving her cash. She kept objecting, but eventually went over and pulled a gas can from her car. I started filling it up. She put her hand on me and said, "Do you have a girlfriend?" I told her no, politely. She said she wanted to pay me back somehow for the gas and asked if I wanted to come to her place. I told her no, less politely. She kept touching my shoulder, thanking me, and then offered me a blowjob behind the station, so I stopped the gas pump, got in my car, and left her there with the gas can. I called my mom a little later and told her about the creepy, sleazy encounter. She paused and asked me if this lady had ratty blonde hair and looked like she was on drugs. I confirmed that yes, that was what she looked like, and how could she know that? This lady was apparently all over the news. She was a prostitute in town and had been at a party earlier. An exchange had gone south, and her baby had been kidnapped by a client of hers and left under a bush in town. She hadn't even bothered to call the police about the missing child until later. They were both arrested and charged. And I can provide the news stories if anyone needs proof.
I just discovered this sub and have spent way too much of my evening reading creepy stories. Then I realized I have one of my own that's never been told outside of my family. When I was a kid, my family used to celebrate Thanksgiving with my uncle, aunt, and 2 cousins. They lived about 4 hours away, so we'd meet at a hotel somewhere in the middle, eat Thanksgiving dinner at a buffet, then go Black Friday shopping together the next day. This specific vacation fall of 1999. I had just turned 10. My parents and cousin's family reserved a suite at Holiday Inn. My youngest cousin, a year older, and I were thrilled to be spending the weekend in a hotel with an indoor pool. We were in North Dakota, so it was way too cold to swim outside. While our parents were in the room doing adult things, drinking, watching football, who knows, they gave us a room key and let us go down to the pool by ourselves. Since it was a big family holiday, there weren't a lot of other travelers. We had the pool room to ourselves until this man walked in. He was tall, fat, and balding, maybe late 40s or early 50s. I thought it was weird that he wasn't wearing swim trunks. His nether region was just covered by a skimpy, shower-sized towel that barely covered his upper thighs. I told my cousin, "I don't think he's wearing anything under that towel." She replied, "Maybe he's wearing one of those Speedos." I tried to ignore him and go back to our water games, but I was a little creeped out, so I kept looking in his direction. Once he lowered himself in the hot tub next to the pool, I noticed the towel was no longer wrapped around his torso. It was floating on the surface of the water. He didn't say anything to us, but the way he looked at us so intensely scared me, like we were food he wanted to eat. Eventually, my cousin got intimidated as well and said she wanted to go tell her dad. We get back to the room and she tells my uncle there was an old man in the pool room staring at us and making weird faces. My uncle and dad followed us back downstairs, but the man was gone. The now soaked towel laid next to the hot tub, and there was spit floating on the surface of the water. Lots of spit. I didn't understand why my dad got so angry. I thought it was gross that the weird man hawked loogies in the pool and made the water nasty. I brought the story up to my mom a few years later when we stayed at a nearby hotel on a different trip. I was a pretty sheltered teenager. I said, "Remember that weird guy who spit in the pool?" She said, "Oh dear Lord, child, that was not spit. Spit man, let's not meet."